Hello, and welcome back to the realm of Kiria under rainshine, and I can talk good. Yes, I most certainly can. Ding! But in today's episode, the cheating will continue. But yes, I'll come back and do a playthrough probably of like doing things more legit. If there's actually another, I don't know if there's only one path. Completing it without Civil War. If there is, I'll probably do it again, actually doing the Civil War legit. If not, I'll just let everything collapse and do the Civil War in the future. But either way, I'll do a more legit style playthrough later. But for now, we're just wanting to see all the lore, the details, the nitty gritty. That's what matters here. I mean, I don't think you're coming to my channel for like high skill level. You're coming for me to read everything. Like, if you're here for high skill level, there are channels that are better at that. Okay? The Vanguards of a New Age. The Kieran Vanguards have long been the best of our best soldiers. Lightly armed and armored, they fought on deadly skirmishes of the front of our armies, whittling the enemy down and threatening their flanks, while the main host moved in to engage. But in the age of gunpowder and mechanized warfare, we need to adapt our vanguards to incorporate modern hit and gallop tactics into their arsenal. Yes, of course. Now what's up, Winterfrost? Today I returned home to my mountain village of a gate for some much needed rest and reflection. The challenges of the plenum are numerous, compounded by the fact that the clarity of the matriarch's mind is confused and confounded by those who seek to trick her for their own gain. I am, of course, primarily talking about Fickle Current and the NAKP cronies, but I have complained about the stallion too much already. I'd rather focus on more pleasant thoughts tonight. A gate has not changed much since I last visited, despite the impressive progress of the Grand Gallop onward in modernizing almost every facet of our lives. The monastery is still quiet as ever, with long periods of quiet, peaceful meditation in the gardens during the day, accompanied by wind chimes and bird song. At night, the fireworks pop and sparkle with a rainbow of bright and beautiful colors in Concord's honor, illuminating the stone square on the mountainside where we gather to sing her praise. But even here, the passage of new decrees is plainly visible. Kieran, who were but colts and fillies when I descended to Vermilion in service to the matriarch years ago, are now grown mares and stallions, and many of them have answered Matriarch Rainshine's call for aspirant vanguards to join her in Vermilion. Before they would do so, however, they will first venture to the Noctician Forest in the Borderlands for intense and harrowing training. I have seen how such training hardens the hearts and souls of many Kieran before them, so I took it upon myself to honor these Kieran with Concord's blessing before they depart. As I rubbed the holy ashes across their head scales and across the stripes of their horns, I could only think back to when these brave souls were but foals, scampering across the monastery grounds. I had known them all, and had the honor of teaching them our holy tenets and Concord's divine guidance as they grew up. Stonecleft had always been strong and clumsy, but had a tender kindness to his heart that left him with only friends and without enemies. Firewhip was lithe, cunning, and temperamental, but she always stood by those she trusted and respected, and I know she will make an excellent vanguard. And then there's Firefly and Dragonfly, the inseparable pair of brother and sister who did everything together, from mischief as little foals to proudly serving their matriarch. They and the others I bless today are some of the best and brightest Kieran I know, although I worry for the hardships they will soon face. I know that they will triumph over them all and bring honor to the realm. As I placed the ashes on the last Kieran, I stepped back and asked them a simple question. Why do you fight for? What do you fight for? Without hesitation, they all answered, and that they fought for the Matriarch Superior in Concord. Even though it was the answer I expected, it still left me deeply pleased and relieved to hear it. These Kiirans will not be beholden to the self-serving entrance of Fragrance, nor the squabbling plenum, nor the mourning secretariat and its fractional politics, and certainly not the heretics of the Rising Fire. They are loyal to Concord and the matriarch first and foremost, and no temptation shall lead them away from the path of righteousness and honor. They will charge into battle, carrying a hoof-written anthology of Concord's divine teachings and tenets, never forgetting that it is because of her glory and guidance that the realm was created, and in that I feel proud. They serve as an ever-important reminder that the work I do in Concord's name is important, as long as my brothers and sisters in the faith similarly remember our devotion to our goddess. We will be able to protect Kiria from the forces of unchanged Marzation that threaten to destroy it. Yes. You must protect, no matter the cost. Seafarer Marines. The CC Trading House has long employed seafarer Marines in Griffonia to protect its ships from pirate attacks when moving valuable goods along the high seas. These Marines are largely members of the diaspora and would be better served protecting their homeland rather than business interests. We will negotiate the assimilation of CC's seafarer Marines into our banners to bolster our Arby's capabilities. Big Trouble in Little Kiria. Autumn Blaze still hadn't gotten used to the formal military bows from the general as she entered the room, but she had enough meetings with Coral River that she was gradually getting used to it. The general himself was always kind and friendly, so that didn't bother Autumn, but it was more the fact that she now found herself involved in military intelligence briefings that threw her off. She never imagined that the military would partially answer to her, yet she also never imagined she'd be in the position when she was a foal. The majority of the realm is quiet, save for a few scuffles with the bandits to the west, but the big issue is fragrance. Coral River said, tapping a map of Kiria for emphasis. Parliamentaries who call themselves in Gleaming Scales have all but broken out into gang warfare in the streets against a coalition of social and religious forces, including Way of Fire mystics and trade unionist movements in fragrance. They're popular with nationalists in the realm, and are mostly led by diaspora returnees, which explains their ideals. Gleaming Scales seems to have imported Wigbardian fascism almost down to the letter, and trust me, I've been to Wingbardy, I should know. Okay, so it sounds like it's time to get the military involved, Autumn said. Why haven't they dealt with this already? Because Fickle Current and the NAKP have often used Gleaming Scales as under-the-table enforcers for their policies in fragrance and raspity, Coral River elaborated. They're farther right than the NAKP is, but they aren't afraid to join forces when it suits them both. So normally going after Gleaming Scales would be unforeseeable, because Fickle Current and his allies would bail them out. However, there has been a split between the NAKP and the Gleaming Scales lately. We could crack down on them now, but they are only a fringe movement, and the situation fragrance is delicate. Clearing them out could embolden other parties to fill the power vacuum, whether that be the Rising Fire or trade unionists. But they're hardly pleasant, Kieran, and they're likely funded by wealthy individuals who don't have our nation's best interest in mind. I'd be lying if I said I'd be sad to see them go, she shrugged. She shrugged and deferred to Autumn with a bow to her head. At any rate, the decision is not mine to make. The responsibility rests on your shoulders, Premier. The Gleaming Scales must be put down before they become even stronger. The situation in fragrance is too delicate to disturb. Yes, we cannot mess with the delicate balance of the nation. That is right. The Tea House Mercenaries. Winterfrost tongued the inside of her cheek in contemplative thought as she watched the latest ship from Griffonia sail into port. It was a cargo freighter loaded with goods from Griffin lands, but Winter was more interested in the creatures on it. Some were griffins, a few were ponies, but most were Kieran. They were all employed by the CC Trading House, one of Kira's oldest trading houses. Yet few of the Kieran on board had ever seen their ancestral homeland. CC fled the realm with his business when the Silence started, and had maintained its success overseas by employing members of the Kieran Diaspora to sail its ship and to protect them with their lives. It too was coming home, just like its employees, and Kiria had Fickle Current to thank for that. Winter herself wasn't as thankful as the rest of the plenum about that. Syce was brought back because it had experience fending off pirates and protecting its cargo with well-trained seafarer marines, and Kiria had a pirate problem in Auburn Island. Kiria needed the return of Syce's business to establish foreign trade and to use its marines as a stopgap measure until it could train its own army and navy. But this was Fickle Current's work, and everything that the Kieran did was done with his friend's best interests on his mind, interests that seemed to frequently overlap with making more money. While the Marines might officially have been placed under the command of the Vermilion Banner Army, Winter doubted that their loyalties moved as quickly as their supposed allegiances. Were these Kieran truly ready to serve their matriarch, or were they still the Syce trading house's creatures? If push came to shove, Winter wasn't sure she wanted to be in the room when the realm found out. One thing was certain, she knew. Fickle and his cronies were strengthening their own position while addressing their own problems. Winter and her fellow mystics would have to keep pace if they wanted to keep the heart and soul of Kiria firmly devoted to Concord and the Matriarch. 3 companies of seafarer marines will be incorporated into the Vermilion Banner Army. Cool. The Vermilion Armada. Our once proud navy was mothballed and later scuttled as a result of the silence. We control a large swath of coastline in northeastern Zebrica, yet we have no navy to patrol it. We must begin to build and assemble a modern navy to keep our coastline safe and allow us to protect our forests over the waves that we rightfully rule. Yeah, because if I do this again and actually do things like fully legit, I'm definitely gonna go for things that give political power quicker, and like there are certain things I definitely want to do in a second run that are make it more legit, and also make it where I'm actually doing things in a way that makes more sense for making the country work better as I go. But I mean, first run, sometimes your first run isn't perfect, it happens. It happens. Develop the eastern seaboard. The Kieran living on our seaboards were almost entirely reliant on fishing to survive throughout the silence. As a result, the eastern seaboard is woefully underdeveloped. We can make use of these scattered fishing villages to cobble together local workforces for new dockyards and shipyards along the coast that will boost our naval production and economy. Sounds good, sounds good. Order in the court! Order in the court! I wish I had a gavel. I just use my fist. I don't know why I'm looking. I know I don't own a gavel. I usually do the prop thing, and it's let me just, wait, no, I don't have a gavel. Come on, me. Order in the court. With the Imperial Constitution finally written and delivered to every town in Kiria, no matter how big or small, Autumn Blaze had hoped that the worst of the challenges that document would face were behind it. But while the rest of the realm had read and ratified the Constitution, the city of Raspity quickly rejected a part of the Constitution relating to the implementation of the new judicial system. After a quick talk with her advisor, Fernflare, she soon figured out why. Raspity has always had the important judicial institution that they're fiercely proud of, Fernflare explained. The Procreate of Raspity is the entire system where the priests with the greatest seniority in the city can serve as an absolute arbitrators and judges in any cases or complaints they take an interest in. It's a system where right and wrong is decided solely by whoever is the highest in the pecking order, and it's been entrenched in the city for a long time, even during the peak of Vermilion's power. I can understand why they don't want to let it go. They have to, though, Autumn protested, frowning at the letter of Raspity's rejection. They can't just accept part of the Constitution to keep their own judicial system. The Constitution is needed to standardize their laws and practices across the entire realm, so it's easier to govern. They can't even claim they're doing it for the way of fire, even. Even Winterfrost agrees to it. And she's the voice of the religion in Vermilion, but not in Raspity. Fernflare quickly countered. Pushing this issue could create tensions between Vermilion and Raspy down the line. It might be better to let them this exception just this once. Once we give the one city an exception, the others will want their own. Raspidy's friendship is important enough to allow exception. Fine. I don't like it, but I'm not gonna lose political power. I'm already cheating to get more. I don't want to cheat to get even more than I already am. You know? But yeah, I am at least making myself get most of the negative from weekly stability lost while the event goes down. But I'm gonna not take the effects if not selected. And I'm also gonna do the event because I like events. Events are cool, okay? Can you say they're not cool, huh? No, you can't. Because if you think they're not cool, why are you on my channel? Did you go the wrong direction somewhere? Like this channel is for events. It had only taken 5 minutes for the last bandit cell outside of Amarthith to collapse. The local constabulary, supported by a company of Vermilion banners, had surrounded the bandit hideout and demanded the surrender of every Kirin inside. When the bandit leader insisted on fighting to the death, a single shot from a Mark's Kirin ended her rule for far quicker than it began, and her followers shortly thereafter surrendered to the banners. Midnight Candle watched with a small frown on her face as the bandits were led away from their encampment one by one, with banner shoulders guarding the column on either side. The bandits certainly didn't look like the vicious marauders they were in the stories parents told their foals. Rather, they were poor and broken Kirin, many well into their middle ages, many more barely old enough to be considered adults. Some had foals clinging to their legs or backs, crying in fear as their parents were dragged away to await their fate. All of it hurt Candle's soul, and she couldn't help but mention it when the company's commander trotted by. They may be poor farmers just trying to feed their families, but they're bandits, Candle, the officer said, shaking his head. Desperation doesn't forgive the killing and stealing they've done. We should be helping them, not imprisoning them, Candle countered, and she touched her red and orange robes for emphasis. The rising fire wants to help all the Kirin of the land. If we work together to support one another, then the farmers wouldn't have to turn to banditry to support their families. The way of fire only imposes order and treats the sympathies of unrest, but it does nothing to weed out the root cause. The officer just shook his head. I don't disagree with you, he began, but how far should we let an individual push their interests when it hurts so many more? If we are ever to move forward as a nation, we need to unify and deal with the problems at hoof. Maybe one day we'll be able to stop Kirin from turning to a life of banditry, but all we can do now is play catch-up and stop the ones who already have. He patted Candle on the shoulder and gave her a small nod. Go back to camp and ready a service for the troops, chaplain. I'm sure there will be plenty more like you who want to know if they are doing is right in Concord's eyes. Today we kill bandits, but tomorrow we may not have to. I hope so. Killing bandits is way too much political power. But yeah, in a future run, I'm just throughout while we do this run, I'm thinking of how I'd be successful in a future run. The Flagrant Flotilla. Sitting at the bottom of the Fragrant Harbor are 3 old warships, once the most modern ships in the realm, but scuttled during a sailor mutiny in the city during the silence. They've been underwater for decades now, but expeditions have confirmed that they are still in decent condition. Raising these 3 ships and retrofitting them will allow us to field 3 outdated but formidable ships to our new navy. I think in like a future thing, I just need to, if I want to succeed without civil war, I need to focus on political power and stability increase over economy, because I basically was like rush economy, which, you know, did help my economy, to be fair, but wasn't the best in other ways. Dredging up old history. It wasn't long before the first of the ancient ships breached the surface of the water, its crooked and splintered most exposed to the winds of fragrance for the first time in 90 years. Fickle Current watched as salvage crews busily set to work securing the rotting wreck to tugboats and barges, ready to haul it into a nearby dry dock for repairs and refittings. It was one of 3 early dreadnoughts that had formed the backbone of the Vermilion Armada before the silence, and when it was scuttled along with 2 sister ships, it had been one of the most advanced seafaring vessels in the world. Nowadays it would have been horribly obsolete, of course, but some salvage and retrofitting would turn it to a serviceable, if outdated, foundation for a new Vermilion Armada. The history of the ships was something that every foal of fragrance knew well, and Current was no exception. The ships had taken part in the Armada mutinies after the silence was passed, where the sailors of the Armada attempted to seize their old ships, mothballed for 10 years by that point, and strike into the open waters as pirates, mercenaries, and smugglers, anything to provide for Fragrant's swiftly impoverished populace. Soldiers from Vermilion had suppressed the mutiny, and retook most of the mothballed ships, immediately scuttling them to prevent a second mutiny. It was just another insult and a long list from the material capital, and the message it sent was crystal clear. Vermilion expected Fragrance to quietly huddle up and die, and any attempts the city made to save itself were treason. That humiliation stung deep, and the hateful lessons it had taught had simmered for 100 years. But today it was a new day. Like the ships of the line returning from the murky depths of the harbor, Fragrance was beginning to return to the yesteryear's glory. These ships raised in Fragrance and lots from its dry docks would be the first safeguard Kiria's post-silence maritime interests. Fragrance, just like them, was leading the way for a post-silence Kiria, and one day Fickle Current hoped Fragrance and all its children will be given the respect they deserve for everything they sacrificed for the realm. Fragrance will save Kiria. Matriarch Rainshine, best remember that. The scuttled dreadnoughts of the Fragrant Flotilla have been recovered and are being restored. Nice. I'm actually gonna go down some and, focus on these guys first. Let's do that. Okay, sure, that's good enough. Honestly, I think I'm just gonna let you guys finish in your thing as normal, because you're gonna finish August, October, September, like later this year. I mean, I'm in no that much of a rush. Purchase equestrian naval blueprints. We do not have time to develop modern naval ships from scratch, but we do have friends who are already at the forefront of naval thought. We will benefit from our close ties to Equestria to acquire modern blueprints for ships, weapons, fire control systems, and more that will allow us to begin to construct a modern navy. I mean, we already kind of have been. I mean, they're just destroyers. It's not like we're building the most advanced stuff, but you know, we've got a navy being built up. I'd say we're doing pretty all right. It's nothing to snuff at. Let's start building some infantry, because why not? An honest trade. And we're back to Fickle Current. An honest trade. Today, my friends in Fragrance Enterprise and myself met with the Equestrian delegation over the transfer of ship schematics and blueprints into our hooves. While the designs of the ships that gave us were outdated by their standards, and the fire control systems and battery schematics were similarly antiquated to the modern world, they obsolete the 3 ships we raised from Fragrance Harbor to the point where they'd only serve well as training dummies. But this transfer of knowledge wouldn't even be possible without the effort of misguided Premier Kiria in befriending the Equestrians. Even though she may be hopelessly outclassed by the requirements of her job, even a broken clock is right twice a day, as they say. The deal's not perfect, of course. In exchange for these blueprints and schematics, we had to agree to give Equestrians prospecting rights for any resource they find in Kiria. So in exchange for a one-time gift of obsolete knowledge, they earn themselves a steady stream of valuable raw materials to siphon out of our nation. This won't hurt us in the short term, as Kiria is so underdeveloped and improperly exploited that we do not have a lot of resources immediately on hoof for delivery. In essence, we're only exchanging a small fraction of our already pitiful small potential in this deal, but we will be stung in the long term if we do not find a way to renegotiate or renege on the deal as we properly exploit the resources of our lands. Of course, you will gain an ever-growing share of our material output, sapping us of what should be ours by right. While the deal itself went off without any complications, I had unfortunate encounter with the delegate by the name of Applejack, one of Autumn Blaze's friends, and supposedly a member of the so-called Elements of Harmony. I think she was supposed to represent honesty, if I recall correctly, which is a useful trait to have when negotiating a business deal, though I did not care all that much to properly commit it to memory. Magic artifacts are a useful tool, but their importance is increasingly diminishing in a modern era of technology and science. At any rate, the mayor pulled me aside after the meeting and tried to give me a lecture about proper cooperation with the other leaders of the plenum, and though she did not outright say it, she implicitly accused me of using the plenum for the benefit of my friends and myself over the benefit of the realm. Was she correct that the path of modernization I wish to take Kiria on does directly benefit the returning Dysphoria like myself? It also stands to greatly benefit the realm as a whole. A cooperation with my colleagues only comes when they meet me halfway. It is not fair for one party to bend over backwards to please an uncompromising partner. After all, I did try to explain this to her, but the mayor must be part donkey. That would explain her stubbornness, at least. Applejack is pretty dang stubborn. She's probably the most stubborn of the main cast. It seems that the only system she's willing to accept and understand is one that directly mimics the equestrian model of harmony, and anything else is completely foreign to her. Now, I mean, to be fair, she was born in a tiny town and doesn't even leave Equestria much at all. Does she? Is she one of the ones that even leaves? I don't know. Well, actually, yeah, she definitely does, because at least in the movie. And anything else is completely foreign to her. Now, at least I understand where Autumn Blaze learned her hopeless idealism from. Proper cooperation with my peers does still remain an elusive ideal, I will admit, and not one that I can easily reach. Many of the ideas of other cliques are simply incompatible with the modern Kiria, particularly with traditionalist nonsense that Priestess Winterfrost spouts out during every session of the plenum. I cannot afford to compromise with her too much, else I will lose the backing of my followers and supporters. They wish to see a properly modernized Kiria, not one laden with the burden of outdated religious philosophy, and if I am perceived to be too weak, then I will be ousted as NAKP's leader. Even in this, life is like a business, and an incapable executive must be replaced for the good of the company. In this case, the company is the country. It cannot have a weak executive board if it is to prosper and be profitable. We'll have to be careful to find the right balance between compromise and dissent if I am to steer the fortunes of both Kiria and myself to more profitable tomorrow. Yes, of course. But I think this is a good time to go ahead and end this video. I almost said end this country, and it's like, no, that's not the right word. I'm not about to end this country randomly. No, that's not it. But I think this is a good time to go ahead and end this video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell button. And as always, peace.